It's an uncomfortable story, but one that is fairly obvious should not be imitated. Making rash vows and then foolishly following them through to the point of killing one's own daughter is terrible and was not an example to be followed.
Then why did God help him win the war? See, it makes no sense when you think Christianity doesn't believe in human sacrifice. But as soon as you believe that as soon as you know that Christianity is based on human sacrifice, all the stories make sense, all of them.
The lack of an explicit condemnation of Jephthah is not a sign that the author endorses his behavior, rather the ambiguity invites reflection and moral judgment on the part of the audience. Thanks for watching. My name's Lachlan.
So when this guy dies and talks to God, he's going to say, so you thought I helped Jephthah win the war to prove a point to Jephthah that you shouldn't do this. And I just sacrificed a daughter. And that's like a mafia type thing there. What are you talking about? Are you insane? Why are you bad-mouthing God? Why are you people out there, Christians and Jews, why are you bad-mouthing him so much that he would do something like that? Just to prove, like with Job. Just to prove a point to devil, well, we're going to let Job's whole family die and have boils on them and be tortured and just to prove a point to Jephthah, another person that's evil who thinks human sacrifice is okay. We're going to help him out just to prove a point to Jephthah. And we're going to do that by what? Having his daughter be human sacrificed? These are not things that I would not spread. I would not spread rumors around like this about a good person. If you say God's a good person, he would not do that. Okay? Only a king would bastardize the story and make it so that God is an evil, evil person, okay? And this reoccurring motif in the Bible that God just lets people be destroyed and tortured and killed just to prove a point to some dude that isn't worth proving a point to is absurd, okay? And spreading rumors and lies about God, saying stuff like that, like he helped Jephthah win the war, he helped him, knowing that he was going to human sacrifice his daughter. You don't do that. If God's version of what God would do is God would have not let him win the war, right? So that he would learn his lesson. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have punished, let a totally innocent little tiny girl be human sacrificed in the name of teaching a lesson to someone. That is not who God is. Quit telling people that's who God is. That is not who God is, you liars. Okay? That is a God that was made in the image of kings. Yes. So that's why the God in the Old Testament acts like a king, because those books were written by kings. But just remember, as soon as you recognize that Christianity is based on human sacrifice, all of it makes perfect sense. None of it sounds absurd. It all just makes perfect sense. Let's go on to the next. Now the story with Jephthah, that was only 11 sentences long, 11 verses, right? So there's no way to misinterpret it, you know what I mean? And he actually did, do with her what he vowed to do, which was burn her as a burnt offering, okay? This next story we're going to talk about is Abraham and Isaac, okay? This is the King's version of what was said, in the Bible, right? King James Version, right? King James Version says that God came down to Abraham, said, hey, I want you to sacrifice your kid for me, which would be a human sacrifice because this kid's a human, right? And Abraham says, okay, you're God, I got to do what you say. Takes the kid, takes a knife and, stuff to bind them with, and they walk up on the hill or whatever to the church, and he puts them on the altar, and he's getting ready to give him the old stabby stab, right? And right before he tries to stab the kid to kill him, to sacrifice him, to human sacrifice him, an angel appears and says, "Hey, don't worry about that, man. I was just joking. Don't do that. God changed his mind. He don't want you to do that, right? Instead, he's got this ram in the bushes over here. Instead of sacrificing your kid, you can sacrifice that ram, since you showed that you have allegiance to God. You know what I mean? You've shown that you are committed to God under any circumstances." What the king wants you to, this is the king's version, keep in mind, okay? The king wants you to think, the king wants you to think there is no such thing as morality when it comes to helping God or doing God's work. He wants you to think that it doesn't matter what's right and what's wrong. What matters is that you follow the authority. You follow God without any question, no matter how horrible it is, how evil it is. That sounds like a king or a dictator telling me a story. That sounds like that sounds like God is made in the image of a dictator. Because that's what a dictator would do. A mafia boss would do that. Go kill your kid so you can show me that you loyalty. Where's your loyalty lie? You know what I mean? Is it with me? Or could you kill your kid for me? This is mafia behavior, okay? It's not to be condoned, all right? But my question is this. If this was not the way it was, okay, if Christianity was not based on human sacrifice, wouldn't the correct response by Abraham be, "I don't believe you. You are not God. You're some kind of devil trying to trick me, because I know God would never ask me that"? I mean, think about it yourself. You're sitting there. I'm talking to you, the viewer. You're sitting on your couch right now. You hear a voice, right? Sounds like God. He says, "Kill your child to show your loyalty." What are you going to do? Are you going to kill your child so you can show your loyalty? Or are you going to say, "You ain't God. God wouldn't ask me that. That's crazy. God is not a piece of garbage. What is wrong with you? Oh, you think I would believe that?" That's the correct response. But what is his response? Keep in mind, even if, because he's afraid of God, God's all powerful, whatever, wouldn't you think he would at least ask the question, "Hey, God, I thought you didn't believe in human sacrifice. Why are you asking me to do it?" You think he would just ask, maybe? Say something about it? "I'm confused. Can you maybe elaborate? Because I'm confused that you said you don't want me to do human sacrifice. Now you're asking me to have human sacrifice my own child." You know what I mean? Is this a test to see if I would go and break your laws and go actually do the human sacrifice? No, it wasn't that. According to the Bible, he just wanted to see if he was loyal or not, like a mafia boss. Okay? And you out there, the Christians, you are to spreading these rumors that God did that. Really? You think when you get up there, God is going to be like, "Why did you spread that rumor, man?" And the story of Abraham was written by Moses, who was a king, right? By bloodline. He wasn't, they didn't call him King Moses. They called him a leader, a prophet. But when you're the leader of an entire society / country, right? And you're the leader because of a bloodline that goes from father to son, father to son, father to son, from Abraham to Noah to everyone in between, and then from Noah down to Moses and everyone in between, all have the same bloodline going, you know what I mean? They're all grandchildren of Abraham. That's literally the definition of a king, right? A duck is still a duck, even if you don't call it a duck, you know what I mean? It quacks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, it's a duck, it's still a duck. Just like a king. You can call Moses a leader, doesn't matter, he's still a king whether he was called a king or not. Because the definition of a king is father to son, father to son, father to son, bloodline. That's a monarchy, that's a kingship. Okay? And, you're going to go to heaven, right? And he's going to be like, and that's who wrote this, right? That's your proof. God's going to be like, "Why would you believe such a horrible story about me like that? I would ask someone to go kill their child just to show their loyalty? Like, what? Why do you think I'm evil like that? Why would you spread rumors? I wouldn't, God's going to say, I wouldn't spread rumors about you, human. I wouldn't go around saying, hey, this human over here, he wanted someone to kill their kid just to show you loyalty. I wouldn't do that to you, human. Would you do that to another human? Would you do that to anyone other than me? What are you going to answer? You're going to say, well, it said it in the Bible. He's going to say, yeah, you mean the Bible that was written by a dictator? Dictator Moses? You're going to be like, yeah, that's the guy. He said that you was talking to him, and we know that it's true, and proof is in the Bible. And he's going to be like, but didn't that dictator write the Bible? The same dictator that you're, like, that's circular reasoning. Okay? And God is going to be like, I can understand you have, disregarding the circular reasoning, if the message was just and like normal, okay? But you have a combination now of the message is coming from a dictator, okay? The book that brings the message was written by the dictator, the same dictator, and the message itself is backwards. It doesn't make any sense, okay? A good God, a good anyone, anything, any person, any good. If you're good, you're not going to ask another being to human sacrifice their child. You wouldn't do it. Not to do a test, not to see if they're loyal, okay? If you do that, you're evil, okay? And you know that, okay? We all both know it. I know it, you know it, okay? If anyone else asked you to do that, you would be like, no, that's evil, okay? If you heard a voice telling you that they were God right now, today, in your living room, right now, while this video is going on, you hear a voice saying, I'm God. I want you to kill your child, to human sacrifice them to show your loyalty. Would you say, oh, I'm going crazy? Or maybe this is the devil trying to tell me? Right? That's what would happen, right? Because you don't believe in human sacrifice. It's not rampant. Back then, it was rampant. It was so common, it was ingrained into the actual religion itself. It's based on it, okay? That's why he doesn't bat an eye. He doesn't question it, Abraham. He just goes and does it, and then, of course, the angel comes and stops him, okay? So everyone says, oh, that's not an example of human sacrifice. That actually proves God's against human sacrifice. No. Actually, it proves that he's for human sacrifice because Moses didn't bat an eye. He would at least ask a question. Well, I thought you were against that. But he doesn't. He just goes and does it because it's common. He knows that God is okay with human sacrifice if the human sacrifice is for him. He's only against human sacrifices when it's for another God. Then he's told, no, that's right, you can't do that. You know what I mean? So, it's not... But my question is when you're talking to God, you think he's going to let you use that circular reasoning that a dictator wrote the Bible and that same dictator has told you the story, and the same dictator told you that the Bible was written, God told, Moses what to write, you know what I mean? But all of it is coming from a dictator. And he's going to ask you, so you believe in a dictator? And even if you do say, yes, I believe in a dictator, then you got to say that you believe dictators are good people, right? And then you also have to say that the message of him, God himself, telling someone to kill their child just to prove their loyalty is what happened. Like, you ain't talking, that's not talking crap on God. That's what the king wants you to just know, that you should do anything and anything the king wants you to, because the God in the king's version is made in the image of a king. That's why he acts like God acts like a king. Anyways, so we got a story with Jephthah that has, an actual burnt offering, his daughter. And notice how it's always a little child. It's always it's your child too. It's not just some stranger child. It's your child that's in this human sacrifice. Okay, all right. Now before we get on to the next one, that actually proves, because all this does is prove that Christianity liked human sacrifice and thought it was moral. Okay, that's all these stories tell so far. Okay, but this next one shows that it's based on, like, the foundation of Christianity is founded it's like the brick, like the mortar at the bottom. That's you take that brick out, the whole thing falls apart. This is the foundation of Christianity, is human sacrifice.